Hello, fellow humans! Edelbrack Smith here, broadcasting from somewhere on that intergalactic sewage dump we call Earth. Today's broadcast is a review for Steamworld Dig 2 on Google Stadia, but before we get into that, make sure to like and subscribe to the channel for reviews, news, and interesting takes on all things Stadia and cloud gaming. Now, I've played a lot of 2D side-scrolling Metroidvanias in my life, everything from Symphony of the Night to Salt and Sanctuary. It's one of my favorite genres in video games. On top of that, it's one of the perfect genres for small, handheld screens. I played a significant amount of Steamworld Dig 2 on my Pixel 4, but before we get into it, let's briefly cover Steamworld Dig 1 since this is a direct sequel. I played Steamworld Dig 1 on the Nintendo Switch before I ever got access to Stadia, and I enjoyed it. It had some cool ideas, but it got repetitive by the time the ending credits rolled. The story was mostly non-essential, but the setting was unique and fun. I didn't pick up Steamworld Dig 2 because it looked like just more of the same, and I was kind of done with it by the end of the first game. So what do I think of Steamworld Dig 2 after having played it? Well, it absolutely is more of Steamworld Dig 1. The story is improved from the first game, though it's still not amazing. Rusty, the former protagonist, has gone missing. You play as Dorothy on a mission to find her missing friend. This time you've got a constant companion in the often hilarious, just as often murderous, Sprite. Surprisingly, there is also a subplot about corporate greed and ignorance and the effect it can have on the world. Just like the first game, the setting is definitely one of the best parts. The steampunk Wild West world is pretty unique and something I hope they continue with at some point. The game does start in a Western setting, but that doesn't mean that that's all there is. In my time with the campaign, I encountered several unique and beautiful areas. There were a few that really surprised me, and I enjoyed playing through each of them. The art style is fantastic as well. Bright colors and a unique aesthetic make the game a joy to look at throughout the roughly 7-hour campaign. But all of that quickly takes a backseat to the gameplay. In this regard, Steamworld Dig 2 knocks it out of the park. It isn't drastically different than Steamworld Dig 1, but everything has been polished and improved. If you haven't played the first game, the series reminds me of an upgraded Dig Dug with RPG elements. Your objective, rather than running to the right, is to dig down into the earth. While digging, you'll collect various types of gems and minerals that you'll sell back in town. You'll use that money to upgrade your equipment, allowing your pickaxe to do more damage or keeping your lantern from going out as fast. Speaking of equipment, you'll find small dungeons scattered throughout the game. Inside, there will be a series of challenges to solve, either puzzles or platforming, or sometimes a mix of the two. You'll be rewarded for these dungeons with minerals, secret artifacts, and sometimes even new equipment like the jetpack. There are a lot of hidden things to find in these dungeons, so I'm thankful that Image-Informed Games saw fit to include a small check mark over the dungeon icon on the map whenever you find all of the items in a particular dungeon. This saves a ton of time scouring areas that you've already cleaned out for some secret you think might exist, but doesn't. Another resource you can find are hidden cogs. These can be used to equip cog mods on equipment. Think of it like a talent tree, but one you can respec whenever you want to experiment with new cog mods that you've acquired through the story, or through finding specific numbers of hidden artifacts and delivering them to the collector in town. These mods range from doing more damage to enemies with your pickaxe to essentially being able to fly in the latter part of the game. There are also a set of very interesting mods that increase the difficulty of the game in unique and interesting ways. You can collect these blueprints by finding one of 3 brother bots hidden throughout the map. And I do mean hidden. You'll need to explore far and wide to find these guys, but doing so will net you mods like making enemies only drop loot if they're killed in creative ways. Now, they aren't for everyone, but they do increase replayability for those who love the game. By the end of the game, I had cogs enough for all of the abilities that I cared about, but depending on how well you do, your mileage may vary. Every time you die, you drop a percentage of the loot you're carrying, and since most enemies don't respawn, and mineral nodes never do, that money is gone for good. If you collect every hidden item in the game, a new dungeon will appear in the desert. To complete this dungeon, you must beat 7 challenge rooms in one run. Each time you die, the order of the rooms is randomized and the difficulty of these rooms can be extreme. There were a few points that I had to learn new techniques that were never taught or needed in the rest of the game. It was at times frustrating, but I managed to continue doing better each run, and I equipped a few mods that really helped out. One of the interesting things about this dungeon is that each room is themed, so you may not have access to your entire arsenal. In one room, you can't use your jetpack or grappling hook and must rely on your platforming skills alone. Another is highly reliant on having an upgraded jetpack. Now, I ended up loving these trial dungeons, and when I finished it, I was filled with a deep sense of satisfaction and the final 43rd artifact. The game isn't without problems though. It can be a bit repetitive depending on how much you like the core gameplay loop. Personally, I 100%ed the game and started up a second playthrough because I just wanted more Steamworld Dig 2, which says a lot. The movement upgrades you get by the end of the game go a long way in making the core loop of mine, sell, upgrade to be a real treat. There are some weird decisions, like the lanterns you find and light in the first area that just stop showing up almost immediately. Another issue is that of the fixed amount of loot in the game. Someone having a lot of trouble could find themselves even more on the back foot in late game due to not having the needed upgrades to make things easier. There are ways around this, as certain enemies do respawn when you enter a room, but that kind of grinding is not my cup of tea. Thankfully, I did not have to resort to that as I had plenty of cogs and upgrades by the end. Steamworld Dig 2 is a true masterpiece of indie gaming. It's one of the most fun games I've played in a while, and if you like Metroidvania games, you owe it to yourself to pick this up and give it a try. And with it being a Stadia Pro game at the time of this recording, and with Stadia Pro being essentially free for everyone for 2 months, there is no better time or way to play this game. It ran beautifully on my main PC, but it was also a treat to play on my phone. I'd whip it out and play a quick bit before bed and find myself still playing hours later. Meanwhile, click on this other video to see the review I did of Get Packed, a Stadia exclusive. Like this video and subscribe to the channel so you don't miss out on all things Stadia and cloud gaming. Edelbrack Smith, signing off.